In this video, I'd like to talk about the math question of the day for February 26th, 2023. And for today's question, we have a square root of a decimal number. And to answer a question like this, you do need to have a solid understanding of pre-algebra, particularly fractions and square roots. So at this point, go ahead and pause the video, try to work through this on your own, and when you're ready, we can go through this together. Now, assuming that you have attempted the problem, let's start going through this together. And if you do have suggestions for future questions of the day, feel free to leave those as a comment. Now, when dealing with the square root of a decimal, it might be helpful to rewrite this decimal number as a fraction. And based on the place value, we know this is in the tenths, this is the hundredths place. So we have 1 and 44 hundredths. We can write that as 1 plus 44 over 100, or we can even combine the 1 into this fraction, since we effectively have 144 hundredths. And you can see that if you change 1 to 100 over 100, add these together. But the end result is that this number here as a fraction is 144 over 100. And we know how to take square roots of fractions. If we have the square root of a over b, then we can effectively take the square root of the top and divide it by the square root of the bottom. So, for example, if we have something like, let's say, 16 over 4, we can take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. Up top, the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. This just simplifies to 2. But if we did it by doing the arithmetic on the inside first, we would get the same answer. Since 16 over 4 is just 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So this is just a way to show you that this rule here is valid. It does make sense, and it does work when applied to real numbers. So when we have this square root of 1.44, we can rewrite this as the square root of 144 hundredths, and we can just take the square root of the numerator and divide by the square root of that denominator. And square root of 144, that's just 12, and square root of 100 is 10. And if we want, we can simplify this to 6/5, or we can even write this as a decimal. Since we have 12 tenths, this is 1.2. And the nice thing about a question like this is that it's fairly straightforward to check, since we're asking ourselves which number, when multiplied by itself, gives us 1.44. And we think it's 1.2. But to check this, we just need to actually multiply it by itself. We're multiplying decimals, so we'll ignore the decimals now and move our decimal place at the end. We do 2 times 2, that's 4. 2 times 1 is 2. We put a 0 to move over to this place value. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. Let me just make a bit of room here. And we add now. We get 4, 4, and 1. And then there are 2 decimal places in the original product. So we carry out this final answer. We move this decimal 2 places over. And we now confirm that 1.2 squared is 1.44. Meaning that we have proven that the square root of 1.44 is in fact 1.2. So in our box here, we can put 1.2 as our final answer.